The stagecoach careened off the muddy road just 3 miles outside Truckee, California, sending its sole passenger tumbling into the cold waters of the Truckee River below. And when Quinn Palmer finally pulled the unconscious woman from the riverbank, she opened her eyes and stared at him with the blank terror of someone who did not know her own name. Quinn had been checking his traps along the river that September morning in 1875 when he heard the crash. The stagecoach driver had lost control on the rain-slicked road, and the whole thing had gone over the embankment. By the time Quinn scrambled down to help, the driver was dead, his neck broken in the fall. But the woman, she was alive, floating face up in the shallows, her green traveling dress billowing around her like a lily pad. He dragged her onto the rocky shore and pressed on her chest until she coughed up river water. Her eyes fluttered open, and they were the color of honey in sunlight, wide and confused and utterly lost. "Are you hurt?" Quinn asked, his hands moving quickly to check for broken bones. "Can you tell me your name?" She stared at him, her lips trembling. "I do not know. Your name is right there on your lips. Just think about it." "I cannot." Her voice broke and tears spilled down her pale cheeks. "I do not know who I am. I do not know anything." Quinn felt his stomach drop. He had heard of such things happening after a blow to the head, but he had never witnessed it himself. He looked her over more carefully and found a nasty gash on the back of her skull, hidden beneath her dark hair. Blood had matted the strands together. "It is all right," he said, though he was not sure it was. "Let us get you somewhere warm and dry. Can you stand?" She nodded, and he helped her to her feet. She swayed against him, and he caught her around the waist. She was small and delicate, built like a bird. He could feel her shivering through the wet fabric of her dress. The stagecoach was a wreck, but Quinn searched through the debris looking for anything that might identify the woman. He found a small trunk that had broken open, spilling its contents across the muddy ground. Women's clothing, a Bible, a silver hand mirror. Then he found a letter, water-damaged but still readable. He scanned it quickly. It was addressed to a Quinn Palmer of Truckee, California, from a matrimonial agency in New York. His own name leaped out at him, and he felt his face grow hot with embarrassment and anger. "What the hell?" he muttered. His younger brother Wyatt had been pestering him for months about finding a wife. Quinn had laughed it off, but apparently Wyatt had taken matters into his own hands. The letter confirmed that a Miss Lila Crawford was on her way from New York to become Quinn Palmer's mail-order bride. The stagecoach schedule matched. This woman, whoever she was now, had been Lila Crawford. He looked at her. She was sitting on a rock, hugging herself, staring at nothing. Her teeth were chattering. "Your name is Lila," he said gently. "Lila Crawford, you were coming from New York." She looked at him with those lost honey eyes. "Lila," she repeated as if tasting the word. "It does not feel like mine. Give it time. The doctor will know what to do." He helped her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. She leaned back against his chest, too exhausted or too confused to protest. He could feel her trembling, and he wrapped one arm around her waist to steady her. The ride into Truckee took less than an hour. The town was bustling, even in the rain. The Transcontinental Railroad had come through 6 years earlier, and Truckee had transformed from a rough logging camp into a real town, with hotels and shops and even a proper church. Quinn guided his horse down the main street toward Doc Morrison's office. Doc Morrison was a gray-haired Scotsman with kind eyes and gentle hands. He examined Lila carefully while Quinn waited in the outer room, pacing like a caged animal. When the doctor finally emerged, his expression was grave. "She has a severe concussion," Doc Morrison said. "The blow to her head has caused what we call retrograde amnesia. She cannot remember anything from before the accident. Will it come back? Maybe. Maybe not. The The brain is a mysterious thing, Quinn. Sometimes the memories return all at once. Sometimes they trickle back slowly. And sometimes they never come back at all. Quinn ran a hand through his dark hair. What do I do with her? Well, according to that letter you showed me, she is supposed to be your bride. Seems to me you have a responsibility to look after her, at least until we sort this out. I did not ask for a bride. My fool brother arranged this behind my back. That may be, but she is here now, and she has nowhere else to go. She does not even know who she is. You cannot just abandon her. Quinn knew the doctor was right, but the whole situation made him furious. He was a simple rancher. He liked his life the way it was, quiet and uncomplicated. He did not need a wife, and he certainly did not need one who could not remember her own name. But when he went back into the examination room and saw Lila sitting on the table, her hands folded in her lap, looking small and lost and frightened, his anger melted away. She looked up at him with such hope in her eyes that it made his chest ache. "What did the doctor say?" she asked softly. "He said you need rest and time." "And what about you? That letter said I was to be your bride. Did you know I was coming?" Quinn hesitated. He could lie, but what would be the point? "No. My brother arranged it without telling me. I had no idea you were coming." He saw the hope die in her eyes, replaced by something that looked like despair. Her shoulders sagged. "Then you do not want me," she said quietly. "I did not say that. You did not have to." Quinn crouched down in front of her so they were eye to eye. "Listen to me, Lila. I do not know you and you do not know yourself right now, but you are here and you need help. I am not going to turn you out. We will figure this out together." "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because it is the right thing to do." She searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. "Thank you." He took her to his ranch, a modest spread about 4 miles outside of town. The house was small but well built, with 2 bedrooms and a large main room that served as both kitchen and parlor. His brother Wyatt was there when they arrived, and his eyes went wide when he saw Lila. "You are here," Wyatt said, grinning. "I knew you would come." "We need to talk," Quinn said, his voice flat. "Outside." They stepped out onto the porch, leaving Lila by the fire. Quinn rounded on his brother immediately. "What the hell were you thinking?" Wyatt held up his hands. "I was trying to help. You have been alone for 3 years, Quinn. Ever since Sarah died. You need someone. That is not your decision to make. You were never going to make it yourself. You were just going to waste away out here, grieving forever." Quinn wanted to hit him, but he forced himself to take a deep breath. Wyatt was only 21, full of youth and good intentions and bad judgment. He did not understand that some wounds did not heal, that some losses left scars that never faded. "She has lost her memory," Quinn said quietly. "The stagecoach went off the road. She does not remember anything." Wyatt's grin vanished. "Nothing. Nothing. Not her name, not where she is from, not why she came here. Doc Morrison says it might come back or it might not." "What are you going to do?" "What can I do? I will let her stay here until she is well enough to decide what she wants to do." "And you are going to help me take care of her since this is your mess?" Wyatt nodded, looking chastened. "I am sorry, Quinn. I really am. I just wanted you to be happy again." Quinn sighed. "I know, but happiness is not something you can order from a catalog." When they went back inside, Lila was standing by the window, looking out at the rain. She had changed into a dry dress that Doc Morrison's wife had lent her, a simple blue calico that made her eyes look even more golden. Her dark hair was still damp, hanging loose around her shoulders. "This is my brother Wyatt," Quinn said. "He will be staying here to help out." Lila turned and gave Wyatt a small smile. "Thank you for writing to me, even if your brother did not know about it." Wyatt flushed. "I am real sorry about what happened. The accident, I mean. It was not your fault." These things happen. Quinn showed her to the spare bedroom. It was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a dresser and a window that looked out toward the mountains. Lila sat on the edge of the bed and folded her hands in her lap. "I feel like I should know how to do this," she said softly. "Like I should know how to be a bride, how to run a household, but I do not remember any of it." "You do not have to be a bride," Quinn said. "You do not have to be anything right now except someone who is healing." She looked up at him, and there was something vulnerable in her expression that made his heart twist. "What if I never remember? What if this is all I am now, just a blank slate?" He sat down beside her on the bed. "Then we will make new memories together." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. But once he said them, he realized he meant it. There was something about this woman, something that drew him in despite his reservations. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, like he was her only anchor in a storm. Maybe it was the courage she showed in the face of such terrifying uncertainty. Or maybe it was just that she needed him, and it had been a long time since anyone had needed him. "You mean that?" she asked. "I do." She smiled then, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "Then I suppose we should start." Over the next few days, Quinn and Wyatt worked to make Lila comfortable. Quinn gave her space but checked on her often, making sure she was eating and resting. She spent hours sitting by the fire, staring into the flames as if they might hold the answers she was searching for. Sometimes Quinn would catch her touching things, running her fingers over the surfaces of furniture or fabric, as if trying to trigger some buried memory. Doc Morrison came by every other day to check on her. The gash on her head was healing well, but her memory showed no signs of returning. She could remember everything that happened after she woke up in the river, but everything before that was just darkness. "It is so strange," she told Quinn one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "I know how to do things. I know how to read and write and cook and sew. But I do not know where I learned those things or who taught me. It is like having all the tools but no instructions." "Maybe that is a gift," Quinn said. "You get to decide who you want to be without being tied to who you were." She thought about that. "Maybe, but it is also terrifying. What if the person I was is someone important? What if there are people looking for me, worrying about me?" "The matrimonial agency has been notified. If there is family, they will contact them. And if there is no family, the letter said I was coming here to marry you. That suggests I had no one else." Quinn did not know what to say to that. The truth was, he had been thinking about the same thing. If she had no family, no one to claim her, then what? She could not stay here indefinitely as a guest. The situation would become awkward, improper. People in town were already talking. "We will figure it out," he said finally. As the days turned into weeks, Lila began to settle into life on the ranch. She was a hard worker, always looking for ways to help. She took over the cooking, and Quinn was surprised to discover that she was talented in the kitchen. She made bread that was light and fluffy, stews that were rich and flavorful, pies that made Wyatt close his eyes in bliss. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" Wyatt asked one night, his mouth full of apple pie. Lila laughed. "I have no idea. My hands just seem to know what to do." She also helped with the household chores, mending their clothes and washing the linens and keeping the house tidy. Quinn found himself looking forward to coming home each evening, knowing she would be there. The house felt warmer with her in it, more alive. But it was not just the practical things. Lila had a way of making even ordinary moments feel special. She would point out the way the light fell through the trees or the sound of the wind in the grass. She found beauty in everything, and it reminded Quinn to look for it too. One afternoon in early October, Quinn was repairing a fence when Lila came walking across the field toward him. She was wearing one of her simple dresses and a bonnet to keep the sun off her face. In her hands, she carried a basket. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, setting the basket down. "I made extra biscuits this morning. Thank you." He wiped the sweat from his forehead and sat down on the grass beside her. She had packed not just biscuits but cheese and apples and a jar of cool water. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, watching a hawk circle overhead. "Can I ask you something?" Lila said finally. "Of course." "Wyatt mentioned that you were married before. He said your wife died." Quinn felt the familiar tightness in his chest. "Her name was Sarah. She died 3 years ago giving birth to our daughter. The baby did not survive either." "I am so sorry. It was a long time ago, but it still hurts." It was not a question, and Quinn found he could not lie to her. "Yes, it still hurts." Lila reached out and took his hand. Her touch was gentle, comforting. "I cannot imagine what that must have been like, to lose everything in one day." "It felt like the end of the world," Quinn admitted. "For a long time I did not want to go on, but life has a way of pulling you forward whether you want it to or not." "Is that why you never wanted another bride? Because you are still grieving?" Quinn looked at their joined hands. "Partly. But also because I do not know if I can go through that again, loving someone, losing them. It is too much. But do you not think it is worth it? To have loved, even if it ends?" He met her eyes. "What makes you ask that?" "Because I think I must have been lonely," she said softly. "To agree to travel across the country to marry a stranger, I think whoever I was before, she must have been looking for something. Love, maybe. Or just connection. And even though I cannot remember her, I understand that longing. I feel it now." Quinn felt something shift inside him, like a door opening that had been locked for a long time. He wanted to pull her close to kiss her, but he held himself back. It was too soon. She was still recovering. And besides, what right did he have to complicate things further? "We should get back to work," he said, pulling his hand away gently. He saw the flicker of hurt in her eyes, but she nodded and stood up. "Of course." That night, Quinn lay in bed staring at the ceiling. He could hear Lila moving around in the next room, getting ready for sleep. He thought about what she had said, about loneliness and longing. He thought about how much brighter his days had become since she arrived. He thought about the way she laughed and the way she hummed while she cooked and the way she looked at him sometimes, like he was something precious. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Despite all his reservations, despite his fear and his grief, he was falling in love with this woman who did not even know her own past. But what did that mean? She had come here to be his bride, but that was when she was someone else. The woman she was now, did she still want that? Or would she, if her memory returned, regret everything that had happened? He did not have answers, but he knew one thing for certain. He could not let her go. Not now. Not ever. The next few weeks passed in a blur of autumn work. There was wood to be chopped for winter, livestock to be tended, the last of the garden to be harvested. Lila worked alongside Quinn and Wyatt, never complaining, always cheerful. She seemed to thrive in the crisp fall air, her cheeks rosy and her eyes bright. The people of Truckee had mixed reactions to the situation. Some of the women, particularly the ones who attended church regularly, were scandalized that an unmarried woman was living on Quinn's ranch. They whispered behind their hands and gave Lila cold looks when she came into town. But others were more understanding, particularly those who had known Quinn since he was a boy. They remembered Sarah and the tragedy that had nearly broken him, and they were glad to see him coming back to life. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the general store, was particularly kind. She would slip Lila little gifts when Quinn was not looking, ribbons or buttons or a new tin of tea. "You are good for him," she told Lila one day. "He has been dead inside for so long, but when he looks at you, I see the old Quinn again." Lila treasured those words. She was increasingly aware of her feelings for Quinn, feelings that grew stronger every day. She loved the way he moved with a quiet confidence that came from years of hard work. She loved his voice, low and steady. She loved his hands, rough and scarred but so gentle when he touched her. She loved the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention, with an expression that made her heart race. But she did not know if he felt the same way. He was kind to her, protective, but he also kept a careful distance. He never touched her unless it was necessary, never let their conversations turn too personal. It was as if he was afraid of something, though she could not figure out what. One evening in late October, a storm rolled in from the mountains. The wind howled and the rain lashed against the windows. Quinn was out in the barn, checking on the horses, and Wyatt had gone into town to visit a girl he was courting. Lila was alone in the house, sitting by the fire with a book, when she heard a loud crash from outside. She jumped up and ran to the window. Through the rain, she could see that part of the barn roof had come loose. It was flapping in the wind, and she could see Quinn trying to secure it. But the wood was slick with rain, and he was struggling. Without thinking, Lila grabbed a coat and ran outside. The rain soaked her instantly, plastering her hair to her face and making her dress cling to her body. She ran to the barn and found Quinn on a ladder, wrestling with a piece of tin roofing. "What are you doing out here?" he shouted over the wind. "Get back inside. You need help." "It is too dangerous." But Lila was already climbing the ladder below him, holding it steady. Quinn swore under his breath but did not argue further. Together they managed to secure the roof with ropes and nails. By the time they were finished, they were both drenched and shivering. They stumbled back into the house, and Quinn immediately began stoking the fire. Lila stood by the hearth, dripping water onto the floor, her teeth chattering so hard she could barely speak. "You need to get out of those wet clothes," Quinn said. "You are going to catch your death. So do you." They changed quickly, Lila in her room and Quinn in his. When she emerged, wrapped in a quilt, Quinn was already back by the fire. He had changed into dry trousers and a shirt, and his dark hair was still damp, curling slightly at the ends. "You should not have come out there," he said, but there was no anger in his voice, only concern. "I could not just leave you to struggle alone. I have been taking care of myself for a long time. That does not mean you have to do it forever." Quinn looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression changed. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and cupped her face in his hands. "You have any idea how terrified I was," he said, his voice rough. "Seeing you out there in the storm, I thought you were going to fall. I thought I was going to lose you. But you did not. I am right here. Lila, I cannot do this. I cannot fall in love with you and then have something happen. I cannot go through that again." Her heart leaped at his words. "You love me. Of course I love you. How could I not? You are brave and kind and beautiful. You make me want to believe in happiness again. But I am terrified, Lila. I am so damn terrified." She reached up and covered his hands with hers. "I am terrified too. I do not know who I was or where I came from. I do not know if I have family out there somewhere or a past that will come back to haunt me. But I know one thing for certain. I love you, Quinn Palmer. I love you with everything I am, whoever that is." He kissed her then, and it was like coming home. His lips were warm and soft, and he kissed her with a tenderness that made her want to cry. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring all her love and hope and longing into it. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Not because my fool brother arranged it, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." "Yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married 2 weeks later in the little church in Truckee. Lila wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Henderson helped her sew, and Quinn wore his best suit. Wyatt stood up as best man, grinning like he had orchestrated the whole thing himself, which in a way he had. Doc Morrison and his wife were there, along with a small crowd of well-wishers from town. As Quinn slipped the ring onto Lila's finger, she felt tears streaming down her face. She still did not remember her past, but in that moment, she did not care. This was her present, her future, and it was more beautiful than anything she could have imagined. The reception was held at the ranch. Mrs. Henderson had organized the town women to bring food, and tables were set up in the yard. There was dancing and laughter and toasts to the happy couple. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Quinn pulled Lila into his arms for a dance. "Are you happy?" he asked, his lips close to her ear. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she said. "Even without knowing your past, maybe especially because of that. I get to choose my future, and I choose you." They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by friends and the promise of a new life together. The first months of their marriage were blissful. Quinn had been worried that the physical intimacy of marriage might overwhelm Lila, but she came to him with a passion that surprised and delighted him. She was shy at first, uncertain, but she learned quickly and gave herself to him with complete trust. Winter came, and with it the long, quiet evenings by the fire. They would sit together, Quinn reading the newspaper while Lila sewed or knitted. Sometimes they would talk for hours, sharing their thoughts and dreams. Quinn told her about his childhood, about growing up on the ranch with his parents before they died. He told her about Sarah, and it did not hurt quite as much as it used to. Lila listened without judgment, holding his hand. "I wish I could tell you about my past," she said one night. "I wish I could share those pieces of myself with you. You share yourself with me every day," Quinn said. "The woman you are now, that is who I love." But sometimes Lila would have dreams, fragments that might have been memories. She would wake up gasping, images of a big house with white columns flickering in her mind, or a woman's voice singing a lullaby. She would try to hold on to them, but they would slip away like water through her fingers. "You think my memory will ever come back?" she asked Doc Morrison during one of his visits. "It is possible," he said. "Head injuries are unpredictable, but I would not count on it, Lila. You have built a good life here. Focus on that." She tried to take his advice, and most days it was easy. She loved her life with Quinn. She loved waking up beside him, loved the way he would kiss her forehead before he went out to work. She loved cooking his meals and mending his clothes and falling asleep in his arms at night. She loved the ranch, the mountains, the crisp California air. This was her home now, and Quinn was her family. In February, Lila realized she was pregnant. At first, she was not sure. She had missed her monthly courses, and she felt tired all the time, but she did not want to say anything until she was certain. Finally, she went to see Doc Morrison, and he confirmed what she suspected. "You are going to be a mother," he said, smiling. "Congratulations, my dear." Lila felt a rush of joy so intense it took her breath away. A baby. She and Quinn were going to have a baby. But hard on the heels of joy came fear. What if something went wrong? What if she died like Sarah had? What if the baby did not survive? Doc Morrison must have seen the fear in her face because he took her hand. "I know what you are thinking, but you are young and healthy, Lila. There is no reason to think you will have the same problem Sarah had. But Quinn, he will be so frightened. He will be terrified, but he will also be happy. Trust me." That night, Lila waited until after dinner to tell Quinn. They were sitting on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "There is something I need to tell you," she said. Quinn looked at her, his expression suddenly serious. "What is it?" "I am pregnant. For a moment he just stared at her. Then his face went white. He pulled his hand away and stood up, walking to the edge of the porch. Lila felt her heart sink. "Quinn, please say something." "I cannot do this," he said, his voice tight. "I cannot go through this again. Doc Morrison says I am healthy. He says there is no reason to think anything will go wrong." That is what he said about Sarah. Lila stood and went to him, wrapping her arms around him from behind. She could feel him trembling. "I am scared too," she said softly, "but we cannot let fear control us. We have to have faith." Faith did not save Sarah. No, but it can save us. It can save our family. "Quinn, please. I need you to be strong for me, for our baby." He turned and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I am sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I am so sorry. Of course I am happy. I am just so damn scared." "I know. So am I, but we will face it together." He kissed her then, and she tasted salt on his lips. They stood there for a long time, holding each other under the stars, drawing strength from each other. The months of Lila's pregnancy were both wonderful and terrifying. Quinn was attentive, almost overly so. He barely let her lift a finger, insisting on doing all the heavy work himself. He brought Doc Morrison out to the ranch every week to check on her, even when it was not necessary. At night, he would lie with his hand on her growing belly, feeling the baby kick, his expression a mixture of wonder and fear. Lila bloomed in pregnancy. Her skin glowed and her eyes sparkled. She felt more connected to her body than she ever had, even if she could not remember her past. This baby was her future, a new beginning. In early September, as the leaves began to turn gold, Lila went into labor. Quinn sent Wyatt racing into town to fetch Doc Morrison, then stayed by her side, holding her hand. She labored for hours, and Quinn saw his worst fears coming to life. She was in so much pain, crying out with each contraction. He felt helpless, terrified, certain that history was repeating itself. But then Doc Morrison arrived, and his calm presence steadied them both. "Everything is progressing normally," he said. "She is doing beautifully." As dawn broke, Lila gave one final push and their son came into the world, screaming lustily. Doc Morrison cut the cord and handed the baby to Quinn, and Quinn felt his heart expand in a way he had not thought possible. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled and perfect. "We have a son," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Lila, we have a son." Lila was exhausted but radiant. She held out her arms and Quinn placed the baby in them. She looked down at their child with such love that Quinn had to turn away to hide his tears. "What should we name him?" Lila asked. Quinn thought for a moment. "How about Samuel? Sam for short." "Samuel Palmer," Lila said, testing it out. "I love it." The next few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. But Quinn and Lila navigated it together, supporting each other through the exhaustion. Sam was a good baby, healthy and strong, with a lusty cry that could wake the dead. Wyatt was utterly smitten with his nephew. He would hold Sam for hours, making silly faces and cooing at him. "I am going to teach him everything," Wyatt declared. "How to ride, how to rope, how to charm the ladies." "He is 2 weeks old," Quinn said, laughing. "It is never too early to start." As Sam grew, Lila found herself falling more and more in love with being a mother. She loved the weight of him in her arms, the sweet smell of his head, the way he would look at her with such trust. She loved watching Quinn with him too, seeing the tenderness in his face as he held their son. One afternoon in October, when Sam was about 6 weeks old, Lila was sitting on the porch nursing him when a stranger rode up to the house. He was an older man, well-dressed, with silver hair and a kind face. He dismounted and approached the porch, removing his hat. "Excuse me, madam," he said. "I am looking for the Palmer Ranch. Is this the right place?" "It is," Lila said, suddenly uneasy. There was something familiar about the man, something that tugged at the edges of her mind. "Can I help you?" "I am looking for a young woman named Lila Crawford. I was told she might be here." Lila felt her blood run cold. "I am Lila, or at least that was my name. Who are you?" The man's face lit up with joy and relief. "Thank God! I have been searching for months. My name is Thomas Crawford. I am your uncle." Lila stared at him, her mind reeling. An uncle. She had family after all, but she felt no recognition, no sense of connection. This man was a stranger to her. "I am sorry," she said slowly, "but I had an accident last year. I lost my memory. I do not remember you or anything from my past." Thomas's face fell. "Nothing, nothing. I did not even know my own name until I found a letter in my belongings." He sat down heavily on the porch steps. "I heard about the stagecoach accident. When I learned you were one of the passengers, I feared the worst. But then I heard you had survived and were living here. I came as soon as I could." Quinn came around the side of the house just then, and his expression darkened when he saw the stranger. "Who is this?" "He says he is my uncle," Lila said. Quinn moved to stand beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "Is that true?" "It is," Thomas said. "Lila is my late brother's daughter. When her parents died 5 years ago, she came to live with me in San Francisco, but she was unhappy there. She wanted to make her own way. When she saw an advertisement for the matrimonial agency, she decided to take a chance on a new life." Lila listened to this information, trying to make it fit with the blank spaces in her mind. She had parents who had died. She had lived in San Francisco. These were facts, but they felt like facts about a stranger, not about herself. "I do not remember any of that," she said. "I was afraid of that," Thomas said. "But it does not matter. What matters is that I found you and you are safe. I have been so worried." "As you can see, she is well cared for," Quinn said, his voice cool. "We are married. That is my son she is holding." Thomas looked at Sam and his expression softened. "Married and a baby. Well, that is wonderful. I am happy for you, Lila, truly." "Thank you. But I do hope you will consider coming back to San Francisco, at least for a visit. You have a home there and friends who miss you. Maybe being in familiar surroundings will help jog your memory." Lila felt Quinn's hand tighten on her shoulder. She looked up at him and saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear she was feeling. What if she went to San Francisco and remembered everything? What if the life she had there was better than the life she had here? What if she realized she had made a mistake? "I do not think so," she said slowly. "My life is here now. This is my home. Quinn is my husband and Sam is my son. I do not want to leave them." "I understand," Thomas said, though he looked disappointed. "But if you ever change your mind, the door is always open. You will always have a place with me." He stayed for dinner, and Lila learned more about her past. She had grown up in a wealthy family in San Francisco. Her father had been a banker, her mother a socialite. They had died in a fire when their house burned down. Lila had been 19 at the time. Thomas had taken her in, but she had struggled to adjust to his household. She had been engaged briefly to a man named Charles, but she had broken it off because she did not love him. "You were always so independent," Thomas said, "so determined to make your own choices. That is why I was not entirely surprised when you decided to become a mail-order bride. It was very much in character for you." Lila tried to imagine herself as the person Thomas was describing, but it was impossible. That girl sounded confident and brave, nothing like the frightened woman who had woken up on the riverbank with no memory. But maybe that was not true. Maybe she was still that brave girl, just in a different way. She had built a new life from nothing. She had fallen in love and gotten married and had a baby. Those were brave things too. After Thomas left, Quinn and Lila sat on the porch, Sam asleep between them. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Are you all right?" Quinn asked. "I think so." It is strange, knowing more about my past but not feeling any connection to it. It is like hearing a story about someone else. "You want to go to San Francisco to see if it helps you remember?" Lila looked at him, at the worry in his eyes. "No, I told you this is my home. You are my home. Nothing that happened before matters as much as what we have now. But what if you regret it someday? What if you wish you had tried to get your memories back? Then I will regret it, but I would regret leaving you more." Quinn pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "I love you so much. I love you too." The years passed, and Lila never did regain her memories. Thomas visited once a year, always hopeful that something might have changed, but it never did. Eventually, he accepted that the niece he had known was gone, and the woman Lila had become was a different person. But he grew to love her anyway, and he adored Sam and the other children that followed. 2 years after Sam was born, Lila had a daughter they named Rose. She had dark curls and honey-colored eyes just like her mother. 3 years after that came another son, James, who had his father's serious expression and his mother's quick smile. And finally, when Lila was 32, a surprise baby arrived, a little girl they named Grace. The ranch prospered under Quinn's hard work and careful management. Wyatt eventually married a girl from town named Emma, and they built a house on the far edge of the property. The brothers worked the land together, raising cattle and horses, and the Palmer Ranch became one of the most successful in the region. Lila's days were full. She cooked and cleaned and sewed and gardened. She taught her children to read and write, and when they were old enough, she sent them to the schoolhouse in town. She was active in the church, helping organize socials and charity drives. She made friends with the other ranch wives, women who admired her strength and her grace. But her favorite times were still the quiet evenings with Quinn. After the children were in bed, they would sit on the porch, just the two of them, and talk about their day. Sometimes they would not talk at all, just sit in comfortable silence, holding hands and watching the stars. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if the accident had not happened?" Quinn asked one night. Lila thought about it. "Sometimes. But then I think about everything I would have missed, you, the children, this life, and I cannot imagine wanting anything else. Even without knowing who you were before, especially because of that. I got to choose who I wanted to be. How many people can say that?" Quinn smiled and kissed her. "I am glad you chose me. There was never any other choice." When Sam was 18, he announced that he wanted to go to college in San Francisco. Quinn was resistant at first, wanting to keep his son close, but Lila convinced him to let Sam go. "He needs to find his own way," she said, "just like we did." Sam stayed with Thomas while he attended school, and he would write long letters home describing his classes and his adventures in the city. He graduated with honors and came home to help run the ranch, bringing with him a sweet girl named Margaret who became his wife. Rose grew up to be a talented artist. She would spend hours sketching the mountains and the horses and the wildflowers that grew in the meadows. When she was 21, she moved to Sacramento to study at an art school, and she eventually became a successful portrait painter. She never married, preferring her independence, and Lila understood that completely. James followed in his father's footsteps, becoming a rancher. He married young, at 20, to a girl named Catherine who had grown up on a neighboring ranch. They had 4 children in quick succession, filling the ranch with noise and laughter. And Grace, the baby, surprised everyone by becoming a schoolteacher. She was patient and kind, with a gift for explaining complicated things in simple terms. She taught at the schoolhouse in Truckee for 40 years, shaping the minds of generations of children. As Lila grew older, her body began to slow down, but her mind remained sharp. She would sit on the porch with her grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and the ranch and the life they had built together. She never told them about her lost memory, about the blank spaces in her past. That seemed unimportant now. What mattered was the memories they had made together. The births and the birthdays, the holidays and the harvest festivals, the quiet mornings and the laughter-filled evenings, the tears and the triumphs, the everyday moments that wove together to create a life. Quinn grew old beside her, his dark hair turning silver, his strong body becoming stooped, but his eyes were still the same, filled with love when he looked at her. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The whole town turned out for the party, and Quinn made a speech that had everyone in tears. 50 years ago, he said, I pulled a woman from the river. She did not know her name or where she came from. She was lost and alone, but she was also the bravest person I ever met. She looked at me with those honey eyes and decided to trust me. She decided to build a life with me, even though she had no idea what she was getting into. And every day since then, she has made me happier than I ever thought I deserved to be. Lila, you are the love of my life, and I thank God every day that you came to me. Lila stood and kissed him, and everyone cheered. And I thank God every day that you were there to catch me, she said. Quinn died on a cold December morning when he was 78 years old. He went peacefully in his sleep, Lila beside him, her hand in his. She held him for a long time after he was gone, memorizing the lines of his face, the feel of his skin, the weight of his hand. She had known this day would come, but it still felt like her heart was being torn from her chest. The funeral was huge. People came from all over the region to pay their respects. Quinn had been a good man, respected and loved by everyone who knew him. Lila stood by his grave, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, and said her goodbye. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving me a life. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for everything. After Quinn died, Lila moved into town to live with Rose. She was 80 years old by then, still sharp but increasingly frail. She spent her days reading and knitting and visiting with her grandchildren. But she missed Quinn with an ache that never went away. One afternoon in late spring, Lila was sitting on Rose's porch when she saw a young woman walking by. She was carrying a small suitcase and looking around with wide, nervous eyes. She reminded Lila of herself, all those years ago, lost and uncertain but trying to be brave. Lila called out to her. Are you all right, dear? The young woman turned. I am looking for the Palmer Ranch. You know where it is? Lila smiled. I do. It is about 4 miles outside of town. What business do you have there? I am supposed to marry Sam Palmer. We have been corresponding for months. He sent for me. Lila felt tears spring to her eyes, history repeating itself but in a beautiful way. Sam is my son. Welcome to the family, dear. What is your name? Emily Wilson. Well, Emily, let me give you some advice. Life is full of surprises and things do not always go the way you plan. But if you are brave enough to take a chance, if you are willing to trust your heart, you can build something beautiful. Do not be afraid. Emily smiled. Thank you, madam. I will remember that. As Lila watched the young woman walk away, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had lived a good life, a full life. She had loved and been loved. She had raised children and seen them grow into good people. She had made a difference in the world in her own small way, and she had done it all without knowing who she had been before. She had created herself from nothing, built a life on faith and courage and love. That was her greatest accomplishment. Lila died quietly in her sleep one night in June, just a few weeks after her 82nd birthday. Her children were with her, holding her hands, telling her they loved her. As she slipped away, her last thought was of Quinn and the day he had pulled her from the river. She could see his face so clearly, young and concerned, his dark eyes filled with determination. "I have you," he had said. "You are safe now," and she had been. She had been safe and loved for the rest of her life. At her funeral, Sam spoke about his mother's courage. Rose talked about her kindness. James remembered her strength. Grace spoke of her wisdom. And all of them agreed that Lila Palmer had been the heart of their family, the foundation on which everything was built. They buried her next to Quinn, under a big oak tree on the ranch. The headstone was simple, just her name and the dates of her birth and death. But underneath, Quinn's children had added an inscription that summed up their mother's life perfectly. She did not know where she came from, but she knew where she belonged. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Lila had found her home, her family, her love. She had made new memories, beautiful memories, and those memories would live on in the hearts of everyone who had known her. The ranch continued to thrive under Sam's management, and Emily proved to be every bit as brave and capable as Lila had been. They had 5 children, and they taught them all about their grandmother, the woman who had lost everything but found even more. As the years turned into decades, the story of Lila and Quinn became legend in Truckee. People would tell it to their children, a tale of love and courage and second chances. And every time the story was told, it ended the same way, with the words Quinn had spoken to Lila that first day, words that had changed both their lives forever. "Then we will make new memories together." And they had. They had made a lifetime of memories, and those memories were their greatest treasure, more valuable than gold, more enduring than stone. Because love, true love, is not about where you have been. It is about where you are going and who you choose to take with you on the journey. Lila had chosen Quinn, and Quinn had chosen her, and together they had built something that would last forever, a legacy of love that would echo through the generations, inspiring others to be brave, to take chances, to trust their hearts. The ranch still stands today, passed down through the Palmer family, a testament to the love story that began with a woman who had lost everything and a cowboy who taught her that sometimes losing your past is the only way to find your future.